In this video, I will be discussing the distorted position on equality section of the AfriForum, The World Must Know report. The concept of equality is controversial because there are so many different definitions for equality. In its most basic form, equality means that people who are in the same situation should be treated the same. The dominant view of equality in South Africa has become inseparably linked to the notion of representativity, however. In a South African context, this means that the national demographics of the country must be represented in every sphere of society, including the different sectors of the economy and different sectors of employment. This notion of equality found its way into various laws that regulate various spheres of society, but in particular the labour market. Affirmative action was introduced by the Employment Equity Act of 1998, which states that equitable representation must be achieved in all occupational levels in the workforce. The designated group that should receive preferential treatment according to the Act is defined as black people, women, and people with disabilities. Black people is defined as a generic term, which means Africans, Coloureds, and Indians. Particularly speaking, the designated group earmarked for preferential treatment excludes virtually everyone except white men without disabilities. The Act compels employers to take steps to promote equal opportunities in the workplace by eliminating unfair discrimination. The Act further states, however, that it's not unfair to discriminate against people when affirmative action measures are taken consistent with the purpose of the Act. Every employer is compelled by the Act to implement affirmative action measures to promote the interests of the designated groups. The broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act of 2003 was adopted with the aim of developing a legislative framework within which black economic empowerment must take place. Black people are again defined in the Act. There is, however, no definition for white people in the South African legal system, particularly since the Populations Registration Act of 1950 was repealed due to the fact that it was generally regarded as racist. Black empowerment is defined by the BEE Commission as follows. It is an integrated and coherent socio-economic process. It is located within the context of the country's National Transformation Program, namely the RDP. It is aimed at redressing the imbalances of the past by seeking to substantially and equitably transfer and confer the ownership, management, and control of South Africa's financial and economic resources to the majority of its citizens. It seeks to ensure the broader and meaningful participation in the economy by black people to achieve sustainable development and prosperity." End quote. The Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act of 2000, better known as the Equality Act, declares that constitutional democracy cannot realize in South Africa as long as social and economic inequality are not eradicated. While the Economic Act prohibits unfair discrimination, it also states that it is not unfair discrimination to take measures designed to protect or advance persons or categories of persons disadvantaged by unfair discrimination or the members of such groups or categories of persons. The use of the term categories of persons is significant because it implies it is not necessary to prove that an individual has been disadvantaged by unfair discrimination in the past, but merely that the person has to be part of the right category of persons. Personal circumstances of the individual, such as socio-economic circumstances, are thus irrelevant. It is thus clear that the overarching goal of affirmative action in South Africa is merely to categorize people according to the skin color and to provide preferential treatment to categories of persons, regardless of their socio-economic circumstances. Consequentially, race-based quotas are found in a myriad of facets of South African society, from university enrollment to job appointments and sports teams. Prescribed racial quotas in sport is another example of discrimination against minorities in South Africa. Explicit racial quotas are used under the guise of transformation to deprive minorities of fair and equal opportunities to represent their respective provinces and country. The ANC's 50th National Conference decided that the government should put legislation in place that would allow the Minister of Sport to intervene proactively in sport to serve as a vehicle for achieving national goals. As a result, sport in the national context was no longer perceived as a tool to build a non-racial democratic sport industry, but rather as a vehicle to achieve social transformation. Markedly, an acceleration in the interventionist attitude of the governing ANC party was noted at the 51st National Conference. Resolutions called for the government to play a central and, where necessary, interventionist role in the transformation of sports and recreation, among other things. The South African government proposed legislation in 2019 that calls for even more power to be given to the government to increase government's role in all spheres of South African sport. The clear political interference in sport in South Africa can be further demonstrated with numerous examples. In 2019, the Gauteng province's netball trials became caught up in controversy after evidence had revealed that several white players between the ages of 12 and 18 were not selected simply because of the color of their skin. In 2019, white athletes as young as 9 years old who qualified to represent their provinces at the national championships were almost left at home because South African Schools Athletics (SASA) had declared that only one white child per item would be allowed to represent their province at the championship. This decision was later changed. First-year students at most South African universities are registered on a racial quota basis. In many cases, there are different admission requirements for different races. The South African Police Service operates on a quota system policy for hiring and promotion. Positions are left vacant if a candidate of the appropriate race cannot be recruited, even if another qualified person of a different race is available. In 2016, the Labour Court found that the South African Police Service's previous Employment Equity Act from 2010 to 2014 was unlawful and invalid as it imposed racial quotas. Companies are scored based on the quota of black ownership, black senior management, black training, as well as black suppliers. These scores then translate to the ability to compete for government tenders. However, rather than righting the economic wrongs of the past, black economic empowerment was used as a vehicle for corruption and cadre deployment. It only serves a small connected elite rather than the impoverished, often at the expense of the latter. It is considered taboo or politically incorrect in the current South African political climate to question aspects of transformation, black empowerment, or racial quotas. Any attempts to assess the model of transformation or aspects thereof are met with hostile reaction from the government. The former chairperson of the National Assembly's Portfolio Committee on Sport and Recreation, Batana Kamfela, said that the Constitution requires transformation and that doing away with this policy would amount to treason. Racial transformation and quota systems enforced on various spheres of the society are used interchangeably, and it's often asserted that quotas are legitimate, even though the South African Constitution makes no mention of either transformation or quotas. The ANC's definition of transformation displays ignorance and a lack of understanding of the issue. For example, former Director General of the Policy Coordination and Advisory Services in the Presidency, Joel Netsetsense, wrote that transformation entails that all levels of power and state institutions must be brought under the control of the National Liberation Movement, and that they should reflect in their composition the demographics of the country, and that they should owe allegiance to the new order. In other words, the transformation defined by the ANC does not focus on building unity or improving society's ills, but entails social engineering of society and is accompanied by a hegemony over institutions through cadre deployment. This video forms part of a larger series of videos on AfriForum's report on minority rights. If you find it interesting, you can go check out the playlist that will be on my channel that has all the other videos as soon as they come up. If you are also interested in the type of content that I make, you can subscribe. And also, this is very important that these types of videos get out there to people that are interested. So you can share this video series, this video, or even the report itself with people that you think are interested or only are keeping an eye on South Africa, because it's very important that this information gets distributed to as many people that might find it interesting or even useful. And then as well, all the links that if you want to check the facts that I named in this video, all the links are in the description, so you can go check it out for yourself in your own free time. Also, if you have any comments on the content of this video, please leave a comment below the video. And as always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.
And a lot of people fighting back against this nonsense. Conscious Caracol, whoever he or she is one of them.